Rudis is sitting sadly in a carriage when a woman named Suzanne asks if something is wrong. She wonders why he's heading north and warns him it's dangerous. Rudis doesn't answer, and a girl named Sarah gets angry, saying Suzanne was just being kind. Rudis explains he's searching for his mother, who disappeared during the Fitoa teleportation incident. Suzanne wonders how he'll find her in the vast Northlands, but Rudis says he'll manage. Suzanne offers to share information about the North, explaining that while most areas are poor, the three great magical nations, Rinoa, Neris, and Bashirin, are strong due to their focus on magic. After arriving at a city, Rudis rents a room and remembers Eris, but he knows he must focus on finding his mom. He heads to the Adventurers Guild, disbands his old party, and tries to take a job alone, but the receptionist says it's too difficult. Suzanne overhears and suggests they work together. After some hesitation, Rudis agrees to join her party, called Counter Arrow. The next day, Rudis meets the group, led by Timothy, with Sarah as a mid-range attacker. Sarah, still angry, warns Rudis not to screw up. During a hunt, they face Luster Grizzlies, and Rudis fights, but eventually feels overwhelmed. Suzanne saves him, and the group manages to defeat the Grizzlies together. Later, Rudis reflects on his recent struggles and decides he must move forward. He burns Eris's hair as a symbolic gesture of letting go. Over time, Rudis builds a reputation in the city, known as Quagmire. He continues working with Counter Arrow, but is still conflicted about his path. After saving Sarah from a dangerous situation, she starts to warm up to him. The group continues working together, but Rudis feels the weight of his past and the pressure to keep moving forward. Rudis is seen celebrating with Counter Arrow after successfully completing another quest. He mentions that he has been working with them constantly and gaining a strong reputation. His relationship with Sarah has also grown closer. One day, Sarah asks him to accompany her to buy a new knife, and Rudis realizes that this is essentially a date. The next day, they tour the town and buy the knife. They later go to a bar, where Sarah gets tipsy and admits she feels safe around Rudis. Although Rudis contemplates making a move, he chooses to escort her to her inn. Sarah suggests they talk more at his place, and they end up in his room. When they begin to kiss, Rudis realizes he has no physical reaction. Sarah takes it as a rejection, leaves upset, and calls him the worst. Rudis, feeling lost, drinks alone at a tavern where Soldat, another adventurer, confronts him. After a heated exchange, Soldat listens to Rudis's troubles about his inability to perform, caused by emotional scars from his past relationship with Eris. Soldat suggests they go to a brothel to fix things, but the experience doesn't help. Elise, the woman Rudis chooses, suggests that he fears intimacy due to his past and advises him not to rush things. Rudis decides to take his time, but after accidentally insulting Sarah in front of her, she ends things with him for good. Crushed? Rudis tries to harm himself, but Soldat intervenes and invites him to join their party on a dangerous quest. Rudis agrees, realizing Soldat understands him better than he thought. Meanwhile, Alina Lees, an acquaintance of Rudis's father Paul and his teacher Roxy, learns of Rudis's feats and tracks him down. After some playful teasing, she delivers the news that Rudis's mother is in a labyrinth city. Though Rudis considers leaving to find her, Alina Lees convinces him to first join the University of Magic to hone his skills. Rudis has a dream where the man-god advises him to attend the university and investigate the mass teleportation incident in Fitoa, promising that this will help him recover both emotionally and physically. Following this advice, Rudis bids farewell to his current party and heads to the university with Alina Lees. Rudis and Alina Lees arrive at the Kingdom of Rinoa. Rudis asks Alina to wait while he talks to someone who sent him a letter. Alina reveals she'll be attending the university with Rudis, though she isn't interested in magic, but in boys. Rudis learns she has a curse that requires her to sleep with men to stay alive. At the academy, they meet Genius, a teacher who tells Rudis he must pass a test before enrolling. The test is a duel with Fitz, a silent caster who is secretly Sylphie disguised as a man. Rudis wins by using disturb magic, but doesn't recognize Sylphie. Afterwards, he settles into university life and learns he's exempt from most classes, but must attend homeroom once a month. At the entrance ceremony, Princess Ariel gives a speech. Rudis meets classmates like Zenoba, Linnea, and Cliff Grimoire. He also starts researching mass teleportation at the library, hoping to find answers about his illness and the disaster that sent him to the demon continent. Fitz helps with this research, and Rudis grows closer to him, though he feels confused by his attraction to Fitz, still unaware Fitz is Sylphie. One day, Rudis catches a pair of panties falling from the girls' dorm, leading to a misunderstanding. Fitz helps clear his name, and Rudis starts calling him Senpai out of respect. Rudis continues his routine of training, attending basic classes and working on his research. Zenoba asks Rudis to teach him how to make figurines. Despite Zenoba's strength causing issues, they eventually decide to buy a young dwarf girl named Juliet to help. Rudis buys her from a slave shop, teaches her human language and magic, and they begin making progress in their figurine project. Fitz wakes up one morning and goes for his usual run around the magical city of Sharia, finding it helpful to learn the city's layout. He mentions that his lessons are boring, covering things he already learned from Rudis, but he admires Princess Ariel's eagerness to learn. Later, Fitz, the princess, and Luke explore the city. The princess complains about the confusing roads, and Luke explains that Sharia was designed like a maze for defense. The conversation leads to jokes about Luke's dating habits, and Fitz wonders if Rudis will continue chasing girls even after marriage. At night, Fitz reflects on his thoughts about Rudis, embarrassed by what he's hoping for. Meanwhile, Rudis has been training Juliet in silent casting, and after a month, she's mastered it. One day, Zenoba shows Juliet the Ruijerd figurine, and Rudis asks about the Roxy figurine. Zenoba reveals it's broken after losing a duel to Linnea and Priscina. Rudis is angry, but directs his frustration toward the girls. Later, Rudis confronts the Beast Girls, taunting them into a fight. He defeats Linnea and Priscina, and they wake up tied up. Rudis decides to punish them, but wants advice from Fitz. Fitz suggests marking their faces with ink that could be made permanent if they disobey Rudis. The girls apologize, and later, Rudis reveals the ink trick was just a bluff. Fitz notices Rudis's shrine to Roxy's panties, which embarrasses Rudis. Later in class, Cliff confronts Rudis about introducing him to Alina Lees, a girl he's fallen for despite rumors about her. Rudis is hesitant, but Fitz advises him to help Cliff. Rudis introduces them, and surprisingly, they become a couple. Meanwhile, it's the season for Beastmen to duel for marriage proposals, and Rudis receives a challenge, realizing the Beast Girls have made him their leader. He wins the duel, but a demon king named Batagati challenges him next. Rudis wins the fight, but Batagati joins the special class afterward, leaving Rudis to wonder what will happen next. Fitz is with Princess Ariel when they spot Rudis with Priscina, and Fitz wonders if that's the type of girl Rudis prefers. Ariel teases Fitz about always watching Rudis and asks why, especially since Rudis doesn't remember who Fitz is. Fitz reveals his worry that Rudis might not remember him, and Ariel reassures him that he can handle things however he likes. The story shifts to Rudis in the library, where he's researching the mana disaster. He begins suspecting it's linked to summoning magic, but isn't sure. Rudis asks Fitz about summoning experts, and Fitz directs him to a special student called Seven Star. Rudis realizes Seven Star is Nanahashi, a girl he saw with Orsted. When he meets her, he faints from fear, later waking up and talking to her. Nanahashi explains that she, too, is from Japan and shares her backstory. She was transported to this world during a truck accident, similar to what happened to Rudis. Orsted took her in, and since then, she has been researching how to return to her world. Nanahoshi tells Rudis that the mana disaster might have been caused by her arrival, although she doesn't know the full details. Fitz gets angry at Nanahoshi, but Rudis calms him down. Nanahoshi offers Rudis a deal. She will share information if he helps her with her experiments, which involve summoning magic. As Rudis spends more time with Nanahoshi, he begins to learn about her methods and goals, while also working on his own issues, such as his impotence and his budding feelings for Fitz. Eventually, Rudis discovers that Fitz is actually a girl, a revelation that leaves him confused but hopeful that it might help him overcome his condition. The next day, Rudis thinks about how to fully cure himself when he meets Luke. Luke insists they talk about Fitz, but Rudis says he knows nothing and doesn't want to oppose them. Luke is suspicious, but lets it go. Later, Princess Ariel calls Fitz and reveals she knows that Rudis has figured out Fitz is a woman. Ariel praises Rudis for not revealing her secret and suggests that Fitz, who is actually Sylphie, should reveal her identity to him. Although Sylphie is hesitant, Ariel tells her to follow her heart. Sylphie admits that she wants to be with Rudis, but is afraid because he doesn't remember her. Ariel advises Sylphie to act soon, and they make a plan for Sylphie to reveal herself. Rudis and Sylphie, still in disguise, head out on a mission to find a rare flower. During the trip, Sylphie uses magic to create a rainstorm, forcing them to seek shelter in a cave. There, Sylphie finally asks Rudis to undress her, revealing her identity. Rudis realizes that Fitz is Sylphie, his childhood friend. She confesses her love, and they embrace. However, Rudis struggles with intimacy due to a past issue. Rudis apologizes, and Sylphie is supportive. They return to the academy, and Sylphie shares her story about disguising herself and working with Ariel. Rudis feels guilty for not recognizing her sooner, but things between them begin to heal. Later, Sylphie meets with Ariel and Luke, who give her an aphrodisiac to help with Rudis's problem. That night, Sylphie brings the potion to Rudis, and they share an intimate moment, which helps Rudis recover fully. The next morning, Rudis is grateful to Sylphie. Rudis then thanks Ariel and Luke for helping Sylphie. He also announces that he plans to marry Sylphie, which surprises her. Ariel is supportive and tells Sylphie she no longer needs to disguise herself. They all agree to work together going forward. And the story ends with Rudis and Sylphie preparing for their future as a couple. The scene starts with Rudis praying to Roxy's panties before heading to class, where he greets his friends Zenoba and Julie, feeling cheerful. He also greets Persina and Linnea with a sly look, prompting them to wonder if Rudis is in a good mood. Cliff asks if something has changed, and Rudis announces that he has been cured of an illness, but doesn't share details. He reflects on how Sylphie helped him recover by giving up something precious, feeling more human because of it. Next, Rudis helps Nanahoshi with her research and asks her about dating preferences, but she brushes him off, reminding him to focus on work. She shares that she has experienced love but broke up after a fight, prompting Rudis to apologize for being insensitive. Rudis then thinks about writing to his father, Paul, and his plan to reunite the family. Before that, he decides to marry Sylphie, as she helped him recover. Seeking advice on marriage, Cliff tells him he first needs a house, which Rudis finds surprising. Rudis visits a real estate agency and finds a large but haunted mansion. He takes Zenoba and Cliff to explore it, suspecting it contains a monster. After searching the mansion, they encounter a strange doll-like creature at night. Zenoba handles the monster, revealing it is an automaton. Fascinated by the craftsmanship, Rudis and Zenoba discuss studying it. They find a hidden room in the basement with research notes, concluding that the doll was likely a guardian created by the previous owner. Later, Rudis takes Sylphie to see the mansion he bought. She admires the house, and Rudis brings her to the bedroom, explaining his confusion about marriage, but acknowledging they have much to discuss. Sylphie expresses her willingness to have children, and they talk about her duties with Princess Ariel. Rudis proposes marriage, and Sylphie agrees, asking him not to leave her again. The scene ends with them sharing a kiss. A week after Rudis finishes renovating the house, he reflects on the tradition in his world, where newlyweds must invite everyone they're close to for a meal, like a wedding reception. Rudis and Sylphie make a list of guests: Alina Lise, Zenoba, Julie, Cliff, Linnea, Persina, Soldat, Vice Principal Genius, Princess Ariel, Luke, and her attendants. Rudis also writes to his family, though they live too far away to attend. Sylphie suggests inviting Nanahoshi, and despite Rudis's doubts, they add her to the list. Sylphie also wants to ask Alina Lise something during the party. While shopping for the event, Sylphie insists on buying Rudis new clothes, since his current ones are worn out. At the shop, Sylphie picks a robe made of a special material from the Demon Continent, resistant to poison and acid. The shopkeeper gives Rudis a discount upon learning his connection to Luke, a loyal customer. Afterwards, Rudis and Sylphie relax at home, and Rudis contemplates returning to adventuring if money gets tight. Sylphie assures him not to worry, reminding him she has savings from her work with Princess Ariel. She also offers to handle the cooking, having learned from Rudis's mother and Lilia. The day of the reception arrives, with most of their guests attending except Soldat and Genius. During the event, Nana Hoshi surprises everyone by showing up, and Rudis opens the party. Alina Lees jokes that Badi Gotti, who arrives late, is following a royal tradition of coming when least expected. Rudis delivers a speech, thanking everyone for their support as he and Sylphie start their new life. Princess Ariel and her group congratulate the couple, with Ariel offering Sylphie a year off when she has children. Luke apologizes to Rudis, asking for peace between them. The Beast Girls, Cliff, and even Nana Hoshi share kind words. A revelation comes when Sylphie asks Alina Lees if she's her grandmother, which catches everyone off guard. Though Alina Lees denies it at first, the resemblance between her and Sylphie is undeniable, and she eventually admits the connection. After the reception, Rudis duels Luke at Ariel's request, easily winning. Ariel explains she wanted to ensure that Rudis can take care of Sylphie when Ariel eventually leaves to claim the throne. Later, Sylphie confirms Alina Lees is her grandmother. Cliff vows to lift Alina Lees's curse and asks for Rudis's help. In the end, Sylphie expresses her love for Rudis, planning to grow her hair long, and Rudis resolves to work hard to keep their love strong. The scene shifts to Rudis receiving a letter from his father, Paul. After reading it, Rudis feels happy to learn that Paul is pleased he is enrolling in the University of Magic and proud that Rudis is forging his own path. The letter mentions that Paul and his family are currently in Eastport and plan to head to the Begarit continent, a harsh place he hesitated to take the children. He contemplates sending them to Rudis for safety, but needed someone to escort them. Paul notes that Aisha is clever, like Rudis, but Norn is a different story. She dislikes Rudis and doesn't get along with Aisha. Paul expresses hope that Rudis will care for them and apologizes for leaving this responsibility to him. Rudis reflects on the letter, feeling that it's full of apologies, but also shows Paul's trust in him. He then wonders who will escort his sisters. Later, Rudis talks to Sylphie, who notices he seems happy. He shares that he received the letter and that his sisters are coming to stay with him. Sylphie thinks their arrival will liven up the house. Rudis muses about buying the mansion to be closer to his family, imagining the touching idea of caring for his parents as well. They have dinner, where Rudis offers to teach Sylphie disturb magic if she teaches him healing magic in return. They practice magic together, but Rudis struggles with healing magic, realizing he's never experienced the spell from the receiving end. Sylphie, relieved that Rudis can't do everything, tries to disturb his magic, and they discuss the possibility of their future children having magical talent. Sylphie mentions that, due to her elf blood, having children might be tough, and they both express their love for each other. The scene shifts to Rudis working with Nana Hoshi on a summoning magic circle. Nana Hoshi hopes to move on to the next circle, but she struggles, believing the magic circle is physically impossible to connect. Rudis reassures her, but Nana Hoshi loses her temper. He carries her around the school, seeking help from friends Zenoba and Juliet. They take her to the medical office, and Rudis plans to keep her at his house since she shouldn't be alone. Back at home, Rudis checks on Nana Hoshi, while Sylphie helps by casting healing magic. Zenoba checks in on Rudis, noticing his troubled expression and relating it to Nana Hoshi's struggle. Rudis opens up about his past feelings of helplessness, while Zenoba offers further assistance. The next morning, Rudis tries to cheer up Nana Hoshi, but gets no response. When she finally speaks, she expresses doubt about her magic circle's potential. Rudis shares her magic circle with his friends for fresh ideas. Cliff suggests a multi-layered magic circle, which intrigues everyone, and they work together to create it. Days later, they succeed, and Nana Hoshi is thrilled to finally see the magic circle functioning. They celebrate this achievement with a party where Nana Hoshi reflects on the necessity of enjoying life despite its pain. After the party, Rudis returns home, noticing that his sisters have arrived. Aisha greets him with a hug, and he is pleased to see Rugard with them, feeling happy about their reunion. The scene shifts to Rudis and Rudyard chatting. Rudyard thanks Rudis for bringing his sisters safely. He reflects on how natural it is to protect children and realizes Rudis is the one Paul mentioned in his letter. Curious about Rudyard's past, Rudis learns that he spent 2 years in a dense forest and later traveled to the East Port, where he met Rudis's father. Rudyard wanted to send his daughters to Rudis and asked him and Ginger to escort them. Rudis is surprised to hear Ginger is with Rudyard, and Rudyard explains that she went to visit Zenoba. He also mentions meeting Roxy, who was surprised by the third eye on his forehead. Rudis comments on how quickly Rudyard arrived, and Rudyard explains that Aisha was eager to see him and suggested they escort a merchant caravan, making their journey efficient. Rudyard jokes about being worked hard, and Rudis apologizes for Aisha's behavior. Rudyard then inquires about Eris, and Rudis reveals they parted ways. Rudyard reassures him that Eris doesn't hate him, but Rudis mentions she said they weren't suited for each other. Rudyard believes might have misunderstood Eris's feelings and suggests he listen to her side if they meet again. The next day, Rudis wakes up to noise outside and finds Batty Gotti and Rudyard in a tense situation. After Batty leaves, Rudis asks Rudyard if there was a conflict, and Rudyard brushes it off, saying it was long ago. Rudis recalls their shared history since the Laplace War. Rudyard then departs after breakfast, with Norn asking to join him. He assures her Rudis will look after her. Norn expresses distrust, recalling Rudis's past actions. Rudyard defends Rudis, emphasizing that it's how things work. Afterward, Rudis reassures his sisters, and they discuss the need to get along since they'll be living together. Aisha presents Rudis with a chest from their father, containing money, jewels, and letters. Rudis reads one letter asking him to send Norn and Aisha to school. Aisha insists she wants to care for Rudis instead, showing him a band he gifted her. Rudis encourages her to at least take the entrance exam, promising to decide based on the results. Norn is hesitant about the test, and their conversation leads to tension, with Aisha getting upset with Norn. Rudis later talks to Sylphie about Aisha wanting to skip school to help out. Sylphie suggests Aisha may be capable of more than Rudis thinks, but Rudis believes education is essential. They agree to support each other as a married couple. Aisha shows Rudis her perfect test score, leading him to allow her to skip school, but urges her to discuss housework with Sylphie. Norn's results, however, are below average, and Rudis encourages her to live in the dorms for new experiences. Aisha questions the fairness of this decision, feeling overlooked. As time passes, Rudis observes Norn struggling to make friends at school. Linnea and Persina notice Rudis's unease and give him a mysterious bag meant to cheer him up. Rudis discovers it's filled with items taken from flat-chested girls by Linnea and Persina, who thought it would make their boss happy. He clarifies that he didn't order them to do this and reassures Ariel about his marriage to Sylphie. Rudis scolds Linnea and Persina, defending Norn and making it clear they shouldn't trouble her. Later, Norn isolates herself, skipping classes, leaving Rudis concerned about her well-being. The scene shifts to Rudis, who is anxiously searching for Norn after discovering she has locked herself away. Despite Linnea and Persina trying to calm him, they stop when they see his anger. Rudis wonders if Norn feels as lost as he does and resolves to save her, regardless of her feelings toward him or Aisha. She's still his sister. When Rudis arrives at Norn's classroom, he interrupts the lesson, announcing that his sister is absent and hasn't contacted him. He insists someone must be responsible for her absence and demands answers while assuring the class he won't be angry. One student mentions that Norn seemed upset after comparing herself to Rudis. The teacher clarifies that she only encouraged Norn to learn from Rudis after struggling with homework, which made her emotional. Other classmates share similar stories, leading Rudis to realize he may be the cause of her distress. Later, while sitting with Linnea and Persina, he reflects on how hard it must be for Norn to be compared to him. Sylphie joins them, affirming that it's not Rudis's fault, and everyone encourages him not to dwell too much on it. Rudis thanks them for their support and apologizes for his earlier behavior. Linnea relates to his feelings, understanding the bond with a little sister, while Persina expresses surprise at this side of Rudis. When they ask what he plans to do next, Rudis feels helpless since Norn has isolated herself. Persina suggests forcing Norn back to class, but Rudis counters that simply pushing her won't help. He needs to be there for her instead. Deciding to act, Rudis reflects on how to reach Norn. The other three friends catch up with him and offer to help. Rudis is uncertain, but Linnea has an idea. The scene then shifts to girls discussing Princess Ariel's upcoming speech in the dining hall, drawing a crowd. Sylphie explains that this will give them a chance to sneak into the dorms to find Norn. Rudis prepares to enter Norn's room. With help from Linnea and Priscina, he hides in a laundry cart. When he knocks on her door, he finds Norn sitting on her bed, deep in thought. Rudis admits he doesn't know how to help, but reassures her that he's there for her. This brings Norn to tears, and she realizes he won't hurt her anymore. Rudis comforts her, and in the following days, Norn gradually opens up to him and Sylphie. Rudis observes her progress and reflects that even though she didn't express her feelings, she's becoming stronger. As Sylphie reminds him to report to Princess Ariel, Rudis plans to send a letter to his brother if Nanahoshi finds a way back home. Rudis and Norn study in the library, where she asks if he knows about Rudyard's spear. He confirms he does and reveals he's been writing a book on the Supper Tribe to share the truth. Rudis isn't sure how to write it, thinking about 10 pages to distribute with a Rugard figurine. Norn offers to help, recalling stories Rugard shared. He agrees but asks her not to neglect her studies. Later, at home, Rudis talks to Aisha, who cleans after dinner. She expresses a desire for a salary, which Rudis grants. The next day, they shop, and Aisha buys pots for flower seeds from her journey, intending to ask Rudis for magic soil. He notices an earring for Sylphie, and Aisha teases him about being a lucky husband. Aisha haggles for curtains using Rudis's name. On their way home, Aisha shares her desire for cute items, revealing her mother disallowed personal decorations. Rudis tells her she can choose what she likes. Later, Rudis and Nanahoshi discuss summoning organic objects with her prepared charts. She explains the need for precise criteria to avoid teleporting far away. Nanahoshi gives Rudis a summoning circle for a lamplight spirit, promising him a better reward after their next test. Zenoba successfully creates a figurine for Julie, who thanks him, while Ginger, now teaching Julie, explains her loyalty to Zenoba stems from a promise to his mother. Rudis learns from Cliff about a device to help Alina Lise with her curse, and he offers his mana for testing. Rudis reflects on his happy, normal life, but feels a shift when Sylphie reveals she hasn't had her period in 2 months. After confirming she's pregnant, he thanks and hugs her, overwhelmed with emotion. They share the news with Norn, who congratulates them. Aisha informs Sylphie of a 2-year break suggested by Ariel, while Sylphie worries about her curse. Rudis anticipates his father's reaction and hopes to reunite the family. The next day, he receives a letter from Geese about rescuing Zenith, and he dreams of the man-god, questioning his past decisions. The man-god warns Rudis about regrets, and Rudis vows to stay with Sylphie and their child. In conversation with Alina Lise, she offers to go instead of him, and Zenoba advises Rudis to follow his instincts regarding family. Rudis grapples with his responsibilities, ultimately deciding he must stay for Sylphie and the baby. He notices Norn trying to sneak away, and after a brief exchange, he realizes he can't ignore his parents' danger and prepares to leave, asking Norn to watch over the house. Rudis tells Alina Lise that he plans to go to the Begarit continent, which worries her. She agrees to join him, though, since he has thought it through. The trip will take 8 months, and Rudis suggests she use Cliff's magical device to handle her curse. She realizes she needs to tell Cliff about the journey. Rudis says they should focus on the future, not farewells, and she agrees. Rudis thinks the round trip might take up to 2 years. He tells Nanahoy about his journey, and she gives him a book about teleportation circles, revealing a secret route that could shorten his trip. Rudis thanks her, and she asks him to return quickly to help with her research. Rudis then tells Sylphie about his trip. She supports him and tells him to take care. They decide not to name their baby yet, as it's seen as bad luck. Rudis promises to be back before the baby is born. Before leaving, Rudis gets some supplies and books from the academy and prepares for his journey. Cliff gives him equipment to help with Alina Lise's curse and asks Rudis to take care of her. They travel to a teleportation circle in the forest. After arriving in a desert through the teleportation, they begin their journey. At night, Rudis nearly falls under a succubus's spell, but is saved by Alina Lise. They encounter several challenges on their way, including monsters and a sandstorm, but manage to overcome them. After days of travel, they finally arrive at the bazaar, where they rest before continuing their journey. Along the way, they fight griffins and share a meal. Alina Lise talks about Zenith, Rydius's mother, and hints at unresolved issues with Paul, Rydius's father. After more days of traveling, they finally reach their destination, the city of Ripon. Rydius and Alina Lise arrive in Ripon and decide to search for Paul and the others. Alina Lise suggests starting at the guild, knowing Geese might have set up an information network. As they enter, she spots Geese trying to recruit an adventurer. Geese is surprised to see them and comments on how fast they arrived. Alina Lise says they'll discuss the details later and asks about Zenith. Geese replies that things aren't going well but avoids further discussion until later. Rydius asks Geese to take them to Paul, who is shocked by how much Rydius has grown. Alina Lise notices the close bond between the two, and they all head to Paul. Before meeting him, Geese warns Alina Lise to go easy on Paul, as he's not in good shape. Alina Lise promises nothing, and Geese also asks Rydius not to fight with his father as they did before. When they meet, Paul is surprised by Rydius's fast arrival. He hugs Rydius but laments that he's a failure for not being able to save Zenith. Rydius reassures his father that things will be easier now that he's here. Paul is stunned to hear that Rydius will soon have a child and apologizes for being a bad father. Rydius reflects that while Paul seemed big when he was young, now he appears small. Paul then apologizes to Alina Lise for past issues. She accepts partial responsibility, and Paul is impressed she managed to control her curse. Alina Lise credits Cliff's magical equipment, surprising Paul when he learns Cliff is her husband. They thank Rydius and Alina Lise for coming, and Paul explains that Zenith was last seen in a labyrinth to the north. However, Paul admits he doesn't know if she's still alive. Rydius fears the worst when he asks about Roxy, who has been missing for a month after falling into a teleportation trap in the labyrinth. Paul explains that the labyrinth is dangerous, and Geese adds that Roxy might still be alive, though some disagree. Later, Paul's party, including Rydius, enters the labyrinth. They face several challenges, with Paul occasionally showing off, though Alina Lise scolds him to stay focused. Geese uses a book Rydius brought from the academy to help navigate the floors, and they make significant progress. On the third floor, Rydius hopes to find Roxy. Meanwhile, Roxy is fighting off monsters, but is quickly overwhelmed. Just as she's about to be defeated, she is saved by Rydius, who freezes the monsters surrounding her. In this part of the story, Roxy has been separated from her group and is lost in a labyrinth. She struggles to find her way out using magic circles, but always ends up in the same spot, which makes her feel hopeless. Despite her fear of dying without fulfilling her dreams of becoming a teacher and finding happiness, she gives the magic circle one last try. The story then returns to the present, where Rydius finds and hugs Roxy. She's embarrassed because she hasn't bathed in a month, but Rydius doesn't mind. She thanks him for saving her but doesn't recognize him at first, which makes Rydius so upset that he vomits. Eventually, Roxy realizes she couldn't recognize him because he has grown so much. The group, including Talhand and Roxy, returns to town so Roxy can rest. During their time there, Roxy apologizes for causing trouble, and the group, including Paul and Geese, prepares to re-enter the labyrinth after a few days of rest. Roxy reads a book about the labyrinth, and Rydius helps her with parts she doesn't understand. He reflects on how much he has grown compared to her. Back in the labyrinth, the group fights monsters on the third floor. Roxy becomes exhausted and asks Rydius for help, and they talk about possibly tackling a labyrinth adventure together in the future. Rydius agrees, but worries about his responsibilities as he'll soon have a child. The group then explores the fourth floor of the labyrinth, where they fight more monsters. Rydius gets advice from Roxy about dealing with armored warriors, and the group works together to defeat the enemies. Afterward, they return to town for supplies, and Roxy opens up about her past, expressing gratitude to Rydius's family for supporting her during tough times. The group continues to explore deeper into the labyrinth, finding the magic circles that transport them to the next floors. Eventually, they reach a point where they believe they are near the guardian of the labyrinth. Rudis carefully examines the magic circles and determines which ones are safe to use. After some trial and error, he discovers hidden stairs, which lead the group to the next area of the labyrinth, earning him praise from his companions. In this scene, Paul leads the group deeper into the dungeon, believing they are close to rescuing Zenith. Despite some hesitation from Geese about whether they should continue, Paul insists they press on, reminding everyone to check their gear. Roxy gives Rudis some healing scrolls, preparing for the unknown dangers ahead. As they advance, they come across a powerful guardian, a Hydra, and beyond it, Zenith is trapped inside a crystal. Paul charges forward, but the Hydra deflects their magical attacks. Despite Paul cutting off some of its heads, the Hydra regenerates them. Alina Lise, Talhand, and Roxy struggle to deal significant damage, with Rudis noticing a sound whenever the Hydra nullifies their magic. After a heated retreat and regrouping, the team realizes that their current strategy isn't working. Rudis recalls the myth of Hercules, where cauterizing the Hydra's wounds prevented regeneration, and suggests they try something similar. The group agrees on a new plan. Paul will cut off the Hydra's heads, while Rudis uses magic to burn the wounds, hoping to stop the regeneration. As they execute this plan, it works initially, with Rudis burning the Hydra's wounds. However, during the fight, Rudis notices that the Hydra is attempting to bite off its own burned wounds to regrow its heads. Alina Lise and Roxy intervene to stop this, using ice and fire magic to seal the wounds. The Hydra retaliates with a powerful breath attack, which Rudis barely manages to block with a water barrier. Finally, they manage to cut down most of the Hydra's heads. However, during the last moments of the battle, Rudis gets distracted, and Paul saves him multiple times. Rudis, with the help of his allies, takes out the Hydra's final head by gouging its eye and attacking it with earth magic, sealing the victory. But in the aftermath, Rudis realizes he has lost his left hand. Worse still, Paul is mortally wounded, having been torn in half during the final moments of the fight. As Paul smiles at Rudis one last time, Rudis is left devastated, questioning why his father had to die. Despite defeating the Hydra and freeing Zenith from her crystal prison, the group returns to the inn in silence, grieving for Paul. Back at the inn, Lilia hugs Rudis, comforting him by saying he did well. However, Rudis feels lifeless, deeply affected by his father's death. Zenith remains unconscious for days, and when she finally awakens, she suffers from amnesia, unable to remember her own son or the events that transpired. This leaves Rudis in a state of sorrow, reflecting on the heavy price they paid for this victory. In this part of the story, Rudis reflects on his life and relationships following Paul's death. He feels deep regret about his past, especially not attending his parents' funeral in his previous life, and wonders why Paul sacrificed himself for him. Rudis is filled with guilt, thinking of himself as unworthy of being Paul's son, and questions Paul's decision to leave behind his family. Roxy later visits Rudis, encouraging him to take a break and spend some time with her. Although Rudis initially refuses, Roxy enters his room, expressing her condolences for the loss of Paul and Zenith. She reminisces about her time with Rudis's family, calling it some of the happiest moments of her life. In her attempt to comfort him, Roxy shares her belief that adventurers often lose loved ones and that Rudis should lean on her for support. Their interaction takes an intimate turn, and the two share a moment of vulnerability that leads to a night together. The next morning, Rudis feels lighter and expresses his gratitude. Roxy advises him to focus on cherishing the family he still has, as Paul would have wanted. The group prepares to head back home, and Lilia informs Rudis that Zenith is physically healthy but has lost her memories, likely a side effect of being trapped in the mana crystal. Lilia insists on taking care of Zenith, and they begin their journey back to the teleportation circle. During the journey, Rudis struggles with his feelings for both Roxy and his wife, Sylphie. Though he admits to loving Roxy, he remembers his commitment to Sylphie and feels conflicted. He reveals his marriage and upcoming child to Roxy, asking her to stop treating him like a romantic partner. Roxy, understanding the situation, explains that she acted out of love for him when he was at his lowest, and accepts that their relationship can't continue as lovers. Later, Alina Lise, one of their companions, talks to Rudis, encouraging him to take Roxy as his second wife, citing how happy his parents were despite his father's similar situation. Rudis struggles with the idea, torn between wanting to make both women happy and fearing he might hurt Sylphie in the process. In the end, he decides to ask Roxy about marriage, but Roxy tells him that he must first get Sylphie's approval. The scene closes with Rudis realizing that, despite his earlier judgments, he is becoming more like his father than he ever imagined. The scene shifts to Rudis arriving in Sharia, running frantically toward his home. Geese wonders if Rudis misses his wife that much. As Rudis runs, he recalls the man-god's warning that he would regret visiting the Begorot continent. Fearing Paul's death, he hopes his family is okay. Upon entering his house, he finds it empty and fears the worst until he hears a sound from upstairs. He finds Aisha and asks if she's okay. She notices his missing hand but is more concerned about the whereabouts of Norn and Sylphie. Aisha tells him Norn is at the academy and Sylphie soon appears, unharmed. Overwhelmed, Rudis collapses in relief as Sylphie warmly welcomes him home. Later, they gather in the living room and Norn returns from the academy. She notices Paul's absence and, with a heavy heart, Rudis informs her that Paul has died. Norn, angry and confused, blames Rudis for not being strong enough to save their father. However, when she sees his missing hand, her anger fades and she cries in his arms, realizing he did all he could. Rudis explains everything that happened, including Zenith's memory loss. Norn accepts the situation and asks for Paul's sword, which Rudis gives her, cautioning her to carry it responsibly. Zenith holds Paul's armor, surprising everyone, but she still hasn't regained her memories. Norn asks if she will ever return to normal, but Rudis admits he doesn't know. Sylphie, Aisha, and the others offer their support, and Aisha tearfully hugs her mother, relieved she is safe. Paul's old companions prepare to leave, and Rudis thanks them for everything. Alina Lees apologizes for not saving Paul, blaming herself for his death, but Rudis reassures her that no one is at fault. After they leave, Rudis tells Sylphie that he wants to take Roxy as his second wife. This stuns Sylphie, and Norn accuses him of betraying Sylphie, saying she can't forgive him for marrying another woman. Rudis apologizes and explains that Roxy saved him from despair after Paul's death. Despite Norn's objections, Sylphie intervenes, saying she understands. She admits that while she was initially confused, she has come to accept Roxy's role in their lives. Sylphie warmly welcomes Roxy into their family. Time passes, and Rudis starts training Norn in swordsmanship. Sylphie tells Norn to forgive her brother, reminding her that Paul also had 2 wives. Roxy plans to delay her marriage to Rudis until Sylphie gives birth. A month later, Sylphie delivers a daughter, and Rudis, filled with emotion, names her Lucy Greyrat. Rudis visits Paul's grave and reflects on becoming a father. He acknowledges his shortcomings and vows to grow into a responsible adult, just as Paul would have wanted. He promises to protect what Paul left behind and do his best for his family. The anime series ends with a heartfelt message of growth and responsibility.